Rion Westfall. Fascinating perspective from Ryan. He helps businesses find revenue patterns, talks to leadership. I wonder when you hear the term revenue pattern, what you think of. When revenue is flowing into the business, are there certain patterns that show up? Can they be traceable? Can they be repeated? Can they be documented? Fascinating perspective. He's worked many businesses, close to 10 himself, and now he helps others. But just fascinating perspective. I start the conversation with Radial Deviation. You know what that is? Fascinating backstory of that. Really enjoyed my time. Ryan, thank you so much. And thank you for watching and listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pins. And here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Rion Westfall. Ryan, what's radial deviation?
Radial deviation, that's a term that was given to me by a baseball coach, and it was in reference to your leading forearm. As you're a batter, as you're a hitter, your leading forearm, it's basically taking that wrist and turning that thumb up toward, as if you're trying to pull the thumb back toward your shoulder. And what it does, you can pretend if you had the bat in your hand and you cock that wrist, you cock that wrist back to you. Basically, what it's doing is it's creating a velocity head as you come through to hit, and you're taking that incline, that radial deviation, and you're snapping it. The bat itself is going to create a lot more bat speed in the head of the bat, and that's what radial deviation is.
In this fast-paced MSP landscape, how do you stay ahead? Introducing MSPinfluencer.com, your ultimate hub for MSP news, insights, and community connection, powered by Forza Dash. More than 75,000 MSPs subscribe to our MSP Influencer Pulse weekly newsletter, staying informed and ahead of industry trends. Tune in to emerging podcasts from Joey Pins and leading MSP voices, offering essential tips, powerful insights, and success stories. Explore our multi-authored blogs, crafted specifically for MSP leaders, delivering fresh perspectives and actionable strategies. Celebrate excellence with the industry-leading Forza Dash MSP Influencer Awards, recognizing innovation, leadership, and impact in the MSP community. Join thousands of MSP professionals who trust MSPinfluencer.com to grow their business and expand their networks. MSPinfluencer.com, where today's MSP leaders connect, collaborate, and conquer, all powered by the Forza Dash platform, helping MSP vendors work effectively with MSPs and helping MSPs grow. I'd assume that worked for golf too.
It would work for golf. Not being an avid golfer, but trying it in golf, it doesn't work as well. Because for me, it just kind of whacked up the swing, that kind of stuff. But I'm sure that for more technical people in the golf world, that there's probably some truth to that.
But Ryan, the lesson learned here is that you played baseball your whole life, and you rose through the ranks, and it wasn't until you got to the LA Dodgers system that a coach finally said this to you.
Yep, correct.
So the lesson is we can get so far with what we have, but at a particular point to go to the next level, you do need to be coached.
You've got to be coached if you want to become something more than what you can see in front of you.
I ran a small business, still do for a long time. And the three things that I learned, and I can't wait for your feedback. Number one was to join a peer group, have somebody hold you accountable. It's so tough as the owner, you're on an island by yourself. Join a peer group. Two is there's plenty of entrepreneurial business systems right out there. There's many of them. Just get one and adopt it. And last is hire a coach. Thoughts?
I think, I'm working with a guy right now. He just submitted. He's going through a very difficult point in his life because he just submitted his retirement from the NFL. So he's played 5 years, and people like that. I mean, I know the the drive as far as the athletics behind us. Like it just, I mean, it's what moves us. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs and people are ex-athletes because they just have that, right? And he submitted that, and to his point, he's like, I'm going through withdrawals. I've never known anything. You know, he's 27 years old or whatever it is. His whole family, that, you know, they've lived that whole life. He's Samoan, you know, big, strong, you know, all that kind of stuff. And he says, I've never had to play this game in my head. I've never had to, you know, it was always just on to the next season and train for this and keep eating, keep growing faster, stronger, better, that kind of stuff. But he says, I don't know this game. He says, now that I'm done with this, and what's next, and where's the paycheck going to come from? And yeah, he's got this idea to have this business, but he's like, I'm a fish out of water. I mean, just being open. And so as we're sitting here talking and going through stuff, well, do this first, do this second, do this third, do this fourth. I've only done it 9 times. By the way, I've seen other people do this, you know, so just being able to go through just a couple months and working with him, helping him realize, hey, you just probably saved yourself 3 years.
Wow.
You know, and so to your point, one of the first things I would say people should do is look for that coach, look for that mentor. I mean, they go by a number of terms, right? Coach, mentor, whatever it is. Whether it's, you know, if you're really serious about your growth, find one that you are blessed to pay for. You know, there's always going to be, quote unquote, the old guy that you can bounce a couple of thoughts off and they can give you their 2 cents. I mean, there's always going to be people semi around you in that circle. But the moment when you're saying, hey, I'm going to take my coach words serious, and pay for one, right? I mean, that's what professional athletes do. And I use that analogy with him. I said, look, you're on a football team. You don't have one coach. You've got, like, you know, a whole coaching staff and all these people are helping you. So of course, yeah, keep that going in your life. Don't stop it just because you're no longer a professional athlete. You're a professional businessman, i.e. an entrepreneur. You still need coaching. And you're going to need different coaches in different stages of your life. And that's just, you know, something I, like you, hey, I still use them. I still got coaches I refer to and different people I buy from and do things at different periods of my life.
We must be humble enough, Ryan, to accept when you, I mean, Tiger Woods had a coach, for goodness sakes, right? Everybody needs, you know, to have that outside perspective. I read somewhere, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, where at one particular point you were handed 4 leads and then they said, good luck, you're not going to survive.
That is absolutely correct. That's a great story. I love telling it because in the world that I was in, the EPCM at that point, engineering, procurement, construction management, right? As its industry had a huge wave. It's kind of like the trades right now, how we have a shortage of tradespeople. That industry very similarly. So it helped me because, heck, in my 20s, I'm on this, you know, increased road of going forward, and you couple the engineering with the business background and the fact that I speak 2 languages, it just made it that more steep. And this was a situation where literally, yes, it was a 30-year-old company. The VP of business development, he was retiring after 10 years of being in the business, and they were looking for someone else. I was working for someone else at the time when I had met them, the owners, that is, and had a conversation with them. And then literally the month after that conversation, relationship changed with my current employer. So I came back to them. I said, hey, you know, I'd be interested. And so I came on board as he was leaving. And I mean, I was late 20s, and, you know, I had 2 children. My third was about to be born.
Whoa.
And here I was going to be responsible for, you know, a 30-year-old company that's got, at that time, they had about 20, 25 employees, but they'd been in business for a long time, had a very special niche. And I'm responsible for all their livelihoods. Right. I mean, that's not lightweight. And yeah, that was the situation where that VP, he came in, and you could tell he wanted to get out there as fast as he could, and that's exactly what he did. He took a pencil on a piece of paper right in front of me, wrote 4 names on a piece of paper, handed it to me, and said, well, this is what I got. And that's he did. He walked out the door and he says, "Good luck. You're not going to survive." His confidence in that business continuing beyond him leaving was virtually non-existent. And so, for me, that one was a shock because I'm thinking, hey, you've been around 30 business, you should have at least kind of a book of where you're going to from here. And when none of that existed, I realized, heck, I'm on my own. This is sink or swim, do or die. And so it really, uh, I look back on it, and it was a catalyst for me to do the things that I did, which ultimately, and then in the following 2 years, we tripled the size of
Yeah,
the
you
company.
tripled it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
under 2 years. So what did you see that others missed?
I just one, being an outsider. So that was, I guess, the beauty of it is, one, I didn't know any better. So, I just had to ask them questions. Hey, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? Well, I see it this way and I see it this way. Well, we're missing this, we're missing that. The first thing I did is I went back through the last about 8 years of proposals, and I went through every single one of them. And at that time, this is before AI, right? So I went through the hand proposals and put them all in a spreadsheet. And okay, this is proposal 1, 2, 3. Went through all of them. Who were they to? What were the country? Was it a language? Was it a translation job? What kind of? It was working a lot in the industrial sector and mining and things like that. What kind of material was it? All the data points I could gather about it. What was the size of the project? Were they dealing with a what they call a local patriot, meaning someone from the U.S. is down there working, or are they dealing with a national, someone who's in that country of origin? And what were the factors that did we win or lose the project? And so that was the first place I started. And I went through all the wins. I didn't care about the losers. I went through all the wins and I started outlining, these are the common patterns, these
Wow.
data points. And so from that, I said, look, you guys don't win projects that are sub $500,000, hardly ever. So I'm not going to chase them. In fact, if I get something like that, I'm not even going to respond. And I did. I completely said, I am not being distracted by those, because the probability of win and the effort and all this stuff that goes into it, it's just not worth it. And so little things like that, I started making changes. And I remember one time we were, it was a project up in Canada, and we were on a phone call. This was the very first phone call with them, and the owner's sitting right next to me. He's been the owner for 30 plus years, right, ever since it started. And the other company, he's on the line, and he just says, okay, he gives a short description of everything like that, and he says, any idea what the cost is going to be? And I know the owner, he normally says, yeah, well, we'll take it and give us the flow sheets and we'll look at this and we'll get back to you like that. I just responded to him. I said, yeah, you're looking anywhere from about 1.5 to 1.8 million. And the owner, he said right next to me, he about falls off his chair. And he's like, I could tell we're on speakerphone, so he doesn't want to say anything. But afterwards he says, why did you tell him that that's what it would cost? And I said, isn't that what it's going to cost? Yeah, probably. Okay, so why not tell them?
Right.
Like, if we're not comfortable with what we know things, I mean, we're the expert here.
Right.
So if someone's calling and to getting a range, if I'd rather find out right now whether or not 1.5 and 1.8, if that's a range, is that going to be an issue or not?
Right.
Because if it's going to be an issue, then we probably don't need to be talking. And so, it's just little things like that, finding the patterns, the things that work, the things that don't. And so that's part of what really helped us catapult during those couple of years.
You talk a lot, Ryan, about hunting for revenue patterns. Like, what
Yep.
exactly is a revenue pattern?
A revenue pattern. Well, revenue is the bloodstream for any business. And just like our body, is it healthy blood? Is it non-healthy blood? Do you have a cut or a scrape where you're losing blood? What are you doing to improve that? So in business, as part of that role, I traveled, worked in 15 different countries. And as I traveled those countries, part of my responsibility as, over global business development was to come in and do these audits, do these evaluations on these operations. So you do that for a decade plus, you learn a few things, right? And regardless of the country, regardless of the language, regardless of how skilled or unskilled the workforce was, there was always patterns that would reveal themselves as to why they are either struggling. Either from in business, we have two main things. We have top line and bottom line revenue, right? Top line, that's always dealing with the sales. What are we bringing in? How much is our revenue coming in? The bottom line has everything to do with operational efficiencies. Right. And so most of the time people think of revenue, our mind naturally gravitates to top line. Hey, bring this in, bring this in, bring this in. Okay. But yeah, what happens if we don't change that at all? But we take your 4% margin from last year and make it 8% this year. What does that do to you? Well, that would allow us to, and so we start moving from there. So when we talk about finding revenue patterns, it's literally across the entire gamut of the company. It's from the top line aspect. Yes, we look at that. We look for the patterns where that's improving, those types of things. I've got several processes that I use to identify and pull these things out. Actually, here 2 months ago, we just launched our app, our dashboard online app, and it's awesome. We've got our first 9 companies in there. We've identified 158 patterns within those first 9 companies to the tune of about $65 million.
Wow.
And so as we go through and as we hunt these patterns, it's just helping us maintain clear visibility. Like you said, as a coach, right, or Tiger Woods, he can't see his swing.
Right.
None of us can. I couldn't see my swing. And that's why the guy just popped up and he's looking at it and looking, hey, radial deviation. What the heck is that? I have no idea. And so when we can listen to the coaches and we can say, well, that's interesting. Let me tweak that. Let me change that. All of a sudden, just that small tweak and the bat head speed was coming off. So every time I did make contact, the ball was traveling harder wherever it went. Is that's a wonderful thing in the sport of baseball, right? And so the same thing goes in our business lives. If we can find those little tweaks, those little patterns, having somebody look at it, and that's why I designed it, is so that we can step back and we as a collective, meaning the leadership of the company, we can step back and look at the company. We can see how it is, go through these different tests, if you will, and find the patterns that are affecting either top line and or bottom line revenue to that aspect. And then it just from there, once you've identified, once you've been able to quantify and do those things, it makes it so much easier now to actually have a result in it, and a timely result. You've run businesses, as well as I do. Time is critical. If we just roll over and roll over and roll over in the same chaos that we did last year, it's just a grind, and it's usually not fun. And so, we start our businesses to have fun, not just to be at a grind. But anyways,
Give me an example of a revenue pattern.
One of the first patterns that I deal with is clarity around what problem you solve. Most of the time, whenever we're in conversations with people, the question is known as, "Hey, what do you do?" Right? I mean, that's a typical conversation. You meet somebody, "Hey, what do you do?" Really, what you're asking or what you're being asked is, what problem do you solve that nobody else does? If I'm going to engage in conversation with you, what problem are you going to help me solve? If I can't get that clear in my head, then you're just another name in the library of names. Right? And my experience is when I ask that question, I mean, this is tested many times over. When I ask that question, usually, when I say usually, I'd probably say 85, 90% of the time, I will get a laundry list, bullet points. Hey, we do
Mm.
this and we do this and we do this and we do this, and this is how we do it. And I'll get kind of the system approach as to what they do, but I still then have to interpret the problem that they solve. And so clarity first and foremost around the problem that is solved, that is the first pattern, because that there's a domino effect that goes to all the employees and to all the future clients. When everybody's speaking the same language, when everybody's enveloped in, hey, this is the problem we solve, and you stay focused on that problem. Of course, yeah, we might solve other problems along the way, but this is our focus. When that is identified, when it's spoken, when it's actually written down, there's power in that. Clarity is power all the
Mm.
time. And if it's not written down, it's a liability. If it is written down, it's an asset. So give yourself the strongest asset you and your company can have by being very, very clear as to what problem you solve that no one else does.
Mm.
And so that's usually where I start. That's one example of a pattern. There's so many patterns in sales and operations and maintenance and reviews at the end of a project, or end of you're making sure that those people are actually coming around and either buying again or helping you convert other future clients. There's so many different patterns that are found throughout the cycle of a business.
Mm. So when clients can't give you a quick kind of elevator pitch, I mean, isn't that an issue with mission and vision and core values? Does that need to be reviewed? Did they start without those, or did those just get blurred? What generally happens there if they can't tell you what problem they solve quickly?
Is it an issue with mission and vision?
Yeah,
I would say that the answer to that question encapsulates your mission and your vision,
exactly.
right? And so, and we can ask those questions in multiple ways, and I have in the past. I've
Mm.
narrowed it down to that specific question, right? What problem do you solve that no one else does?
Mm.
And that is, our minds are triggered by better questions.
Hmm.
So when we can ask better, more thoughtful questions, I've asked that question and then therefore spent 2 hours with people on multiple occasions just
Wow.
trying to answer that question.
Wow.
Right. I mean, like literally, I have sat down on Zoom calls, and I have a Miro board, which is like a digital whiteboard. And we just talk, people start talking, and I just start typing and typing and typing. Next, we've got this laundry list of things that they do, but still no clarity around the answer to that problem.
Mm.
And as well as I do, all the studies will show in the psych evals of people and things like that, that if we don't hit a chord within that first 7, 10, 15 seconds,
Hmm.
usually, the odds of anything transpiring just fade out. And so you want to be very, very clear with that, to where people do, hey, tell me more.
So, of those companies, Ryan, that grow really fast, what are some common patterns that you see?
Patterns around companies that grow fast. One of the eh, revolves around the individuals that are hired, right?
Mm.
When you're growing fast, usually it's not a top line issue. It's going to turn into that that bottom line issue where
Mm.
you're working on the efficiencies in between. Hey, can we keep up with this? Can we keep up with that? Can we get the production? Can we maintain quality? Most all of that will revolve around the people that you hire, right? So if you have an issue in hiring people, then you're also going to have an issue usually in your quality, in your production, and things that follow off of that. There's kind of 6 points that I use in a customer roadmap, right? As we look at it, we want to make sure as business that we are focusing on the customer themselves. What's their journey? What does their
Mm.
road look like? And you've been on roads when you travel with the family or whatever, and you're driving and you plug in that GPS location and the map comes up, and then all of a sudden you see, holy cow, there's this big red section. What do you end up doing? Like, hey, where's the detour? Where can I go around this? Right? I don't want to go through the construction or the car wreck. So very similarly, if we look at our businesses, and there's 6 questions that I ask and that I have all of my business's answers as we're mapping this out, not thinking in terms of individual customers, but customers in general. First one, how does the customer find and initially interact with you? Right? You have to be able to understand that. And you might use websites, you might be 100% referral based, you might use cold outreaches, you might use ads, whatever it is, there's a point at which the customer initially finds and interacts with you. How does that look? Second, how did they decide to hire? Now that you've had that initial interaction, that initial find, how is it that they decide to hire? Third, from that, now that they've decided to hire, what does it look like for them to become a customer? So many times when we're working in industries that are heavy regulated, right? You might be, I've worked in Department of Defense. I've worked in construction management. I've worked in these big projects that take years to evolve. There's insurance requirements and this and that, right? The becoming a customer part, that's a long step. If I'm buying the book on Amazon, it's, I put in my name, I put in my credit card, hit bill, done. I'm done in a minute. But in most businesses, hey, we want more information. We've got insurance, we've got regulations. There's a lot of stuff. How do we become a customer? Do they come in? Do we create a portal? I work with financial advisors, and one guy, he turned and he handed me these folders. I'm like, do you have that automated or anything? He says no. I said, well, there's an issue, right? How are we becoming a customer? This is tedious. It's time. Like there's an example of a pattern if you're still doing all of this stuff manually. So becoming a customer, getting involved so that all of the accounts, APAR, everything, all of that stuff is set up and done efficiently. You've been to buy a car. When you go to buy a car, I know the last one. I've bought enough cars with my companies. I went to the last one. I just told the guy, I said, I have 20 minutes. I said, here's my offer. It's for that truck. I said, can you do this? And that's it. I just told him, because I've been on the other end where I've walked in there and all of a sudden 3 hours later, I'm still there to do the same paperwork. It's like, you don't want to do that. So that third one, how does the customer become your customer? Fourth, how does it get fulfilled? Whatever it is that they've purchased from you, whether it's a service, whether it's a product, whether it's a construction, something that takes a year or something that takes a day, how does it get fulfilled? Fifth one, how does it get delivered? There's a delivery aspect to this, right? How are we delivering it? You've seen people that have skyrocketed their business simply by packaging the product differently on how they give it, right? And then of course the sixth one is how do they return to you and also help other clients come to you. That whole referral aspect, their testimonial, getting it. I've seen so many companies that, no, we don't really have a way of capturing their testimonial. Why not? Were they a happy client? Yeah, they were. They told me so. Okay. How is he or she going to help you get more people? Reviews are huge. When you go out to eat and you want to go to a new place, you're in a new city, what do you look at? How many stars do they got? Right? I mean, reviews are critical. So very similarly, going through those six different questions and mapping out how you're doing, and then what that does is, hey, that allows us to go back and grade. Right? We can go back and now start grading. We can go start analyzing. So I'm a firm believer that, hey, first we got to discover like you said, hey, let's, be humble enough to know that there's issues and no business is perfect. So, but first I'm just going to go through and I'm going to discover, how does the business work? How does it operate? How does it flow? Does it not flow? You're going to find holes. You're going to find voids. That's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to see that so that we can see, where are those patterns, either good or bad? Where are those patterns that are affecting our revenue?
It's a wonderful process you have, Ryan. What do you do? So I'm in the tech field, and I end up working with a lot of these smaller companies. And what I often find, and this is just a generalization, that it's a genius engineer that started the company because they're really good at what they do. They're really good at delivering the solution. They're not good at necessarily sales, marketing, accounting, finance. So what do you do with, an owner that is getting in its own way of growing?
What do I do with an owner that's getting in his own way of growing? So, as mentioned, my business is working with, I love entrepreneurships,
Hmm.
and businesses often can't tell what levers are going to get them a 2x, a 3x, a 5x growth with the proper margins. And so they end up scaling more chaos than they do profit.
Hmm.
And so we tactically hunt those patterns that will pull the right levers so that they can add that 7-8 figure growth in the next 6 to 12 months with the proper margins. That's what I do.
Hmm.
So those engineers, and I've got one right now. He's got a $40 million business, and he's owned it for 20 years. And he's like, I just can't seem to get more than
Hmm.
this.
Hmm.
Like it just feels like he's kind of hit a glass ceiling, because he's been there for a number of years. And he just can't seem to get more than that. And we start diving through and we start seeing through. And one of the exercises, because you can't help a business without helping the people, right? Individually. So personally, individually, I get to know these people. I get to speak with them about their personal habits and their personal lives and things like that. And one of those things is almost always, the disciplined use of time,
Hmm.
right? Are you being disciplined or are you being distracted?
Yeah.
And in this case, this owner, he was regularly, I mean, he's got kids, he's got a wife, he's got kids. He's regularly working. We went through this exercise. He's regularly working about 73 to 74 hours every week.
Wow.
And he's just doing it. And that's what he does. And he's okay with that, because it's a 24/7 type operation. And so things are always happening 7 days a week, that kind of stuff. And I get it, when it's not a standard office 9 to 5 kind of deal. You're going to find yourself putting out fires and doing things. And so, going back to my previous phrase, if it's not written down, it's a liability. If it is written down, it's an asset. Well, let's write it
Huh.
down. So we started writing it down, and then afterwards, I do this exercise. I mean, anyone can do it, but I specifically do it because owners need to see themselves. And we always see within our head, but it's the coach that's going to, the coach is the giant mirror, right? That coach is going to show, hey, look at this, right? Here's the video. Watch the replay. See where you're messing up here. See where, that's what the coach is. And in this case, I am reflecting to them their lack of discipline in the own management of their time.
Hmm.
And so we start going through this. And one of the exercises I do as part of this, I ask them, what do you charge out? If I were to hire you, I want to hire you for 2 hours tomorrow afternoon. What would I pay you to hire you for those 2 hours? And usually they give me a rate. Hey, it's $300 an hour. It's $400 an hour. It's $500 an hour. Okay, great. CEO of a $40 million company. Okay, sounds good. I probably charge more. Who knows? But great. Thank you for the number. And now I start going through all those 73 hours. I said,
Hmm.
okay, you're doing this task. If you were to hire someone, theoretically, you were to hire someone to do that task, what would it cost to do that task? Oh, $25 an hour. Oh, $55 an hour. Oh, $100 an hour. Okay, great. And then we just go through, we add them all up. And sure enough, average it out. I said, oh, you tell me you bill out at $400 an hour, but according to this, you're working for $122 an hour. And you can almost see, remember the old style cartoons when someone would get sick and they would make the flush color, they'd make them green like they want to puke. You can almost see that in the owners. Like you said, if I've got this engineer, whatever it is, you can almost see that kind of vomit, puke. Ugh, that I don't like that. Okay, great, wonderful. We're identifying a painful pattern. We are losing money. We are losing opportunities. And then as we start going through it, we say, what of these activities do you actually like doing? What do you see yourself doing? And so sure enough, with him, 73 hours, we did a little bit of a vision exercise. What do you see yourself doing? Well, I see myself working for, and then he outlined about 50 hours a week. Okay, great. And then we went through and we did some more things. I said, one of the things you did not mention is, and I put this line item, CEO vision. There's only one person in the company that can do that. And you're the only one. What is the value of that? I put $1,000 plus per hour because you're the only one that can do that. No one else can. And so as we started looking at that, and this really, every time I do this exercise, it has this aha power to where the owner starts realizing I'm doing 0 hours of that. And if it's at $1,000 plus, I want my rate to be enhanced. Am I actually leading this company, or am I just playing ball with them while we're doing it? I'm not really leading this. And so if I can put my time towards something that's more, profitable, towards the things that I need to do. Oh, and at this time, hey, not to mention the 21 hours, 23 hours, whatever it was that we now actually claw back each week. You get to spend with your wife, you get to spend with your kids. Like what does that start doing for you? And so when people, we're all the same. When we see the value, we call it revenue. And my process, yes, I call it own your revenue, but it's own your mindset. It's own your time. It's own your resources. It's own, you can go on and on and on, right? Having control over these things, being disciplined and not distracted so that you're not losing those things. So really the whole process is designed to find those patterns, be it personal, be it business, because some are the same, right? So they all affect each other. So we're hunting those patterns that are going to have a likely effect of need for change.
What if discipline wasn't about punishment, but about unlocking your best self? I spent 2.5 years writing Discipline for Greatness because discipline changed my life. And I know it can change yours too. This isn't theory. Inside, you'll find real, practical steps you can use immediately to focus better, build stronger habits, reduce stress, accomplish your goals, and bring more balance to your life. Whether you're trying to get healthier, improve your career, or simply feel more control, this book gives you the framework. Start today. Grab your copy of Discipline for Greatness at joeypins.com/book. Thank you. Delegation is a very, very it's a skill that's got to be mastered because I run into many of the small businesses similar to yours that just the owner still insists on ordering the pizza or ordering the paper towels. It's just it's very tough to kind of let the baby go a little bit. I want to talk about mindset of an entrepreneur owner versus kind of the corporate life. I heard you talk about how when you had one of your businesses and your wife was working with you, she comes from a very different background, kind of educational, where they're paycheck is guaranteed, and that wasn't the case there. You had to kind of reframe a little bit. Talk about that, please.
Oh, mindset. First of all, I mean, I'm a believer. I have 4 kids myself, um, and the strongest points in my life have always been side by side with my wife, right? And some of the hardest points have been there too, but my strongest points have been with her, not against her. So people who are married have access to unique powers and abilities simply by virtue of being married. And so as we tap into those viewpoints, um, I'm still learning. I mean, I've been 20 years married now. We're actually 2 days from now. So on Thursday. So March 11th is
Better
our 20th
get that number
anniversary.
straight. Okay.
Absolutely. And as I've worked to focus to get more on board with her, one of the things about not losing my temper, frankly, I mean, that's what we typically do is I found many entrepreneurs, we are very short with our friends and family, right? Just because we're naturally geared to be going at a different speed than everybody else. So being able to slow down and being able to take in their different point of views, absolutely critical in order to just have that advantage. I mean, it's kind of like a home court advantage, right? When you can have a home court advantage and have a partner that you can actually talk with, you may not like what they say, but they see things that maybe you're just overlooking. And I've often found that when, like you said at the beginning, when I humble myself and allow myself to say, all right, honey, yeah, you're right. Or, hey, usually right is somewhere in the middle between what I'm thinking and what she's thinking, right? And but as I focus to do that, it's absolutely critical. You're talking about mindset, and I think I got off on a tangent with spouse, but going back to the original question about mindset, right? Mindset is something that I feel is felt by others more than anything. When you're in a certain mind, when you're, whether it's pensive, if you're in a stressful mind, if you're in a worried mindset, whatever your mindset is, your mindset mood, people are going to, they're just going to, they're going to amplify it, right? People are amplifiers. And if we do it enough and our mindset is kind of on the negative aspect, then any of the good amplifiers usually we're going to probably chase away. Right. So people and our mindsets, we're kind of like magnets. I like to use magnets as a general. When we were playing with 2 magnets, if you remember playing with kids, hey, you put 2 magnets together and then all of a sudden, shoop, they just snap together. Right. But if you flip one of those magnets over and you try and push them together, they want to resist. They want to go the other way. So very similarly, that's what people are like. You know, we have this polarity, and either we're attracted or we repel each other. But similarly, the stronger the magnetic force that attracts us, if you flip that over, also that's the stronger the force of the repel. So as leaders, as owners, as entrepreneurs, having our mindset in its right place is going to do one of two. Well, whatever your mindset is, it's going to have one of 2 consequences. One, it's going to attract whatever is like you. It's going to attract whatever is like you. It's going to repel anything that is not like you. So if you want your business, for example, to be, I use developing a culture of revenue first mindset. in the business, if I want my people to have a culture of a revenue first mindset, as opposed to, hey, yeah, I'm just clocking in, get my 8 hours done so I can get my paycheck and go home. Those are two different types of businesses. They both might be solving the same problem, but they're two completely different types of businesses. And so for us as entrepreneurs, how we want our people to be, I mean, that it is ever so critical that we are waking up and even training. And I go through several training exercises and people things where I'm training my mindset to act a certain way all the time.
So is business success more about strategy or psychology or mindset?
I would answer that it is more about your mindset. The strategy will come, and you can have strategy without mindset. You really can. I mean, you can come up with it. You can bounce some ideas off of other people and throw some strategic moves out there that are going to, hey, this is our business and we're going to do A, B, C, D. But ultimately, let's take the M&A world, right? Mergers and acquisitions. Our business is an asset, and we like to think it's an asset. Usually owners erroneously think it's an asset bigger than what it actually is, what someone else is willing to pay for. Because eventually you're going to want out of your business, whether it's because you ran out of the clock on time and you're old enough that you just want to be done with it, or just a different phase of your life, whatever it is, you're going to reach an end at some point. So if we take that M&A world, the mergers and acquisitions, anytime you start talking with the investors or the buyers, future buyers, are they more concerned about the mindset of the company or the strategy of the company? Right. I've got one guy that he put it this way. He says, I walk in, and this is a guy who's done probably, what did he say? Last time I talked to him, I want to say it was like 120 something M&A events, right? So wow. very, very well versed in that world. And he says, I've done this enough times. He says, the first thing I walk in to where I'm not wasting my time, he says, I come in and I ask a question to the owner, to the founder, whoever that individual is. He says, if I took you and stuck you on a sailboat in the middle of the ocean without internet connection, who's going to make the choices in this company for the next 6 months? And he says, if I get the hesitation, ahs, I don't know, it's not very clear, he says, I'm done. Says, I don't even participate anymore. He's done enough deals that he's gotten to that point. That's his question for determining whether or not this is worth it. And so when I hear testimonials and experiences like that, I think, well, shouldn't we all as entrepreneurs be in a situation where we could hypothetically get on that sailboat without connection, and someone's here to be able to run that business and make decisions that they're empowered to do so? And we all know the answer of that, right? But once we start understanding that, the hard part is actually now, how do we build that? It's one thing to say it, it's one thing to talk about it, but it's a completely different to actually start building a revenue culture where people are empowered to work and to talk revenue. So many times I visit with these business owners and, well, I don't let so-and-so know this. I don't let so-and-so know this. I don't let so-and-so know this. Okay, well, I get it. Having been there, I get it. Maybe we don't talk dollars, but maybe it's a different conversation with just a different metric that then extrapolates into dollars. And so being able to develop a company that actually, one, looks for patterns, because if you can't find the patterns, you remember the old Wizard of Oz movie, right? Dorothy and whatnot and she goes into the Wizard of Oz. I think it's the second time, and the curtain is kind of partially pulled back, and there's this old guy back up there, and he's pulling all of these levers, and nothing's working. The head is broken, all this stuff, and just nothing's working. We can be like that. We can just be tugging on all these different levers. Try this, do this. Maybe this works, maybe that. I don't know. But at some point in time, if you really want to operate the head, you're going to have to start labeling and identifying what those levers are, exactly what they're for, and what is the impact it's going to have. If I pull the lever a little bit, it's going to articulate the head this much. And if I push it a long way, it's going to articulate it. But you're going to have to start identifying and qualifying these things. And that's why I realized I saw that void in businesses in general, to where there's so much struggle. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My father was a serial entrepreneur. I've got 8 uncles that are all serial entrepreneurs. I mean, I've been around entrepreneurship my entire life. And there's always these certain struggles that just continue to happen over and over, despite how successful or non-successful they've been. But it always revolves around a pattern. So being able to articulate and quantify those patterns empowers you just to take what you might learn in 3 years. Let's execute it in 6 months.
Ryan, what's the difference between a leader and a manager?
The difference between a leader and a manager. I love the phrase, you can't push a rope. Right? The leader that allows himself to pull, come this way, not push, right? Come this way. Let me show you. That's a leader. The person that says, let me show you this way of doing things. Let me increase your education, increase your skill, increase your awareness, your mindset, help you gain more control of it. Whatever it is, they're showing you that there's something more. Managers, yes, they have that skill, they have that ability, but if we're drawing a line between leader and manager, a manager, I'd say, would be more like a babysitter, someone that is making sure that the kid doesn't get into the cupboard that he's not supposed to get into, or into the knife drawer that they're not supposed to get into. So it's a different mindset. I think it shouldn't be, but most often it is. The manager is trying to control and put these guardrails around these people as to what they can and can't do. Where a leader is saying, hey, there's opportunity here. There's growth here. How can we expand? How can we, and there's a different feeling, right? There's just a completely different feeling that you get when you're being led to something versus when you're being managed or controlled. And naturally, most people respond better to leaders. There are certain people that just want to be controlled in their little box, but most people that have a little bit of entrepreneurism in them, a little bit of, hey, I want to go and conquer the world. I want to do something cool, new. There's that spirit, there's that fire, and leaders kindle it. Leaders kindle it. They show new stuff. They bring you just a different world that you're kind of unaware of. And so to me, that's a difference between managers and leaders.
And what should an entrepreneur be? A manager or a leader?
An entrepreneur, in my mind, should be much more a leader than a manager based on the definitions that we've given. That is, Again, if he's a manager, going back to my friend's question about the M&A, the M&A folk are going to walk out the door.
Right.
If he's a manager, they're going to turn and walk. If he's a leader and he's led his people or her people to the point that they can do certain things, that they're in a certain pasture that they can perform and occupy and receive and do and conduct, if he's or she has led them there, then that's where value is found in my mind.
Had discussions, very difficult discussions with managers in my organization who thought that they were leaders. And a little ego comes in there, Ryan, and it's a tough discussion. They're both still very important. I don't want to say that, managers are very, very important for it. We need them, but leaders are just different, and they have to be able to lead. It's a tough discussion. Have you ever had to do that?
I have had to do that. I've had taste of it. Going back early in my career, one of the most, and if you've ever had to taste the aspect of being managed, usually it's sour, right? I would describe it as sour. And I remember one time I was working again for an EPCM company, and we were doing stuff, and I was actually the capital cost estimator. The one that they had, again, I came on to work, and the first day of work, the owner let me know that their chief capital cost estimator had just turned in his resignation, and he'd be leaving at the end of the week. And he looked at my resume and he says, "Do you think you could do this?" I said, "Well, I've never done it. Sure, why not?" So I hop on and I'm doing this, and we had a project, very specific. It was about a $260 million project. And we were drafting up the scoping and the pre-feasibility and the feasibility studies for it. And I was in charge of the CCE, the capital cost estimating. And as I'm doing this, the individual on the client side, right? He was an older gentleman, and and not that that's bad. I actually love it. I mean, he just reminded me kind of my grandpa, and those guys, they wake up at 4:00 in the morning and they're already going. You know
work
how
ethic,
that is,
strong
right?
work ethic. Yeah.
And I kid you not. I mean, once I got assigned to him, he got my cell phone, and I literally got phone calls at 4:30 in the morning.
Wow.
And he was an hour ahead of me, so it made it even worse, right? and so we spent probably about, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 months, 8 months on this particular project. And so when I found out that that was his rhythm, right, that's how he's doing, then I said, "Hey, I'll just modify my schedule. I'll just come into work early, because that's what he wants." Right? He wants to be able to go through these and this numbers and that kind of stuff. So I just modified my schedule, and I'd come into work at 4:30, 5:00 in the morning, and we'd have these early conversations. And he was happy because he was getting his stuff done before he had to answer to his board and blah, 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 blah. And there was one gentleman within our company. I'll just call him Mark. And I'm sitting there. We're probably, again, 5 months into this project, and he calls me in, and he brings the owner in, and we're in the little conference room, and he says, "It's come to my attention that you may have been putting different hours on your time card."
Whoa.
Than what you actually work. Because he would see me like this guy is a rigid 9 to 5er, like just rigid, right? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So he'd see me leave at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but had no clue that I was there at 4 a.m. And so this happened, and he says, "Here's a copy of your time card," and he hands me a red pen, and the owner's right there. Hands me the red pen. On top of it, he says, "I want you to go through and correct all the hours on your timesheet, and then sign it at the bottom so that we can document this." And I'm looking at him. I look over at the owner and I grab that. I don't even look at the timesheet. I grab the pen, I sign nice and big over it, and I just slide it back his way. I wasn't with that company 3 weeks later.
Wow.
Not because they weren't good or per se. It's because at that point, I realized that I was being, quote, managed.
Hmm.
They didn't even bother to ask the question. Now, again, 3 weeks later, when I turned in my 2 weeks resignation, the owner comes straight to me. I'll give you a $20,000 raise. We will make sure that Mark is not your manager anymore. We'll do this. What do we got to do to keep you? And I'm like, I'm sorry, it's too late. Like, you should have thought about that beforehand. If you don't trust me enough with this, are you ever going to trust me with the other stuff? I'm one of the youngest ones around here. I got a long way to go. And so
Hmm.
the moment you start managing people, you run the risk of quenching the fire, especially in younger people, right? The younger people that they just got that itch, right? They may not know as much as the older people, but they got a fire. They want to solve problems. They want to figure it out. They want to dive into it. Feed it. Love it. Feed it. Get in there, find those guys, because those are going to be those diamonds. And so leaders will see that. They'll recognize that. Managers will try and corral and control, and usually that's a point of strife in virtually any business.
Ryan, is there something you believed in firmly, strongly 10 years ago that you no longer believe now?
I would say the use of certain tools, i.e., the AI world right now. Me personally, the previous me, the mechanical engineer business, da 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 da. As I started seeing some of this AI stuff come about, right? Because I've lived my whole career without it.
Right.
I've accomplished all these things. Yeah, I've accomplished all these things without it. Why is all of a sudden this going to make it different, right? And so erroneously, I have said, it's just a thing. It's going to apply to a few techies, that kind of stuff. It's not my mojo, whatever it is that was going on in my head. I realized here recently, specifically just within the last half a year, how wrong I have been about that. And I am actually, like I said, like I mentioned earlier, we just recently, about 3 months ago, end of December, launched the dashboard, Own Your Revenue dashboard app. And as I'm launching this, so you got the beta version up, we've got the first companies into it, and I'm starting to lead myself to a vision that 6 months ago, I didn't have, frankly. And as I'm doing this, and I'm getting coached on additional things, i.e., the skill of AI, right? I'm not a programmer. I don't pretend to be one at all, but I hope I'm not that old dog that can't learn new tricks. And so I'm coming in and I've hired certain people. Yes, they're much younger than me, but they know this stuff. Certain guys that I can trust that can teach me. And all of a sudden, well, I can do this now and I can do that now. I can do this now. I just had a post actually this morning about it. I started a couple years ago with a recording, Fathom, one of the tools that just records your Zoom meetings, and then it provides you a little, Zoom transcript from it. And okay, I signed up for it and it just logs in and it does its thing. And I knew it was there, but I've never really done anything with it. And now I've got almost 600 of those, 600 meetings. where I've sat down and talked with clients and customers and potentials and, just all the different meetings that I've had. And I took all 600 of those transcripts and I stuck them in, quote, my brain. So ironically, I call it Ribot. My name is Rion, Rion, and I just call it Ribot. So I stuck it into the Ribot, and I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I've got my dashboard where people are going to be doing work, and everybody's familiar with this FAQ thing, which, hey, if I got a question, I'm going to go to the standard template and it's going to give me an FAQ. I think there's a better way to do this. This is what's been going through my mind here just these last few weeks. And I think I can put Ribot into my app so that when people have questions, they actually get me, kind of. And they get the stories, they get the answers, they get kind of a real-time feed. So now I've got almost 600 of these transcripts now in the bot, and I'm doing this right now. I'm tinkering with it and saying, okay, what would you say this? And I'm just asking it random questions. I'm thinking, dang, that was a good answer. I'd like to meet this Ribot, You're looking around. And so the ability for us to do things like that is just awesome. And I believe that in order for us to be able to serve people better, we've got to be able to tap into it, especially us that have, like we mentioned, we've done all the work without it. Okay, well, how do we do this next phase of work, right? However long that is, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is we got left in our runway. How do we die with our boots on, so to speak, right? So we've got to be able to take advantage of those things. But if we don't know how, then that's going to be very, very difficult. If we're always just, I'm going to leave it up to the third party this or third party that, they can handle it for me. Your business deserves more. Your people deserve more. Your service deserves more. Your future, your legacy deserves more than just kind of ignoring that. And so anyways, that's actually one of the pieces that I am actually integrating into my Own Your Revenue is, okay, as we find these patterns that maybe you, like me, have neglected it, well, let's solve the problem. Let's turn around and start incorporating it, start answering it.
So, Ryan, I started my business back in the 90s, and I was working way too hard. And, like you mentioned 72 hours that one person worked, right? 14, 16-hour days. You've been there before. And I was putting my personal well-being in the back seat. I slowed down my exercise, started developing poor eating habits. And next thing I know, I'm in front of the doctor, and she tells me I'm at 340 pounds. So I had gained all this. I had gained all this terrible amount of weight. I knew I was getting big, didn't think I was that big. But she then tells me, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So I'm driving home and I'm angered, right? I'm not motivated. I'm angry at myself. This is my pie hole. I did this. These decisions I make just don't affect me anymore. I'm not a kid anymore. I've got this family now. It's much bigger. So I spent the next 6-7 months, lost about 120 pounds and 130 pounds, kept it off. You can't look at these things as finishing lines, right? These are lifelong changes. So when I tell people this story, Ryan, I always get the same question. What's your secret? What you doing? There's no secret. I just say discipline, right? Focus, willpower, routine. How does discipline play a role in your life? I know you compare it to being distracted, but discipline itself, what role does it play?
The role that discipline plays in my life is definitely founded in routines. As mentioned, I've got 4 kids, and you're probably familiar with, there's a book out there. It's the #1 success book. It's called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, right? And Napoleon did a whole study on the wonders, the Fords and the Rockefellers and all those back then. And he talks about that. Now, fast forward, there's a gentleman by the name of John Mitchell. John Mitchell is currently at the University of Texas, and he wrote a book called The Missing Secret. And John talks about his work and his business and how he went through Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And he was looking for the secret, and he couldn't quite find it in the book, even though the hidden message is that there is a secret to being disciplined and making the right choices regularly. Because ultimately, whether it's business, whether it's your personal health, whatever it is, it's all about the choices, right? Do you choose to eat the healthy good thing or the non-healthy bad thing? Do you choose to work out or not work out? We all know these things. We know the basics. It's not revelation to us. But John goes in there and he mentions something very clearly. He says 95% of your decisions are made by your subconscious. And as he studies this, 95%. And he wrote, again, that book, The Missing Secret, and he has a program called Think It, Be It. And he teaches this to the coaches. He teaches it to athletes. He teaches it to entrepreneurs, where 95%, let's just take that into account. If 95% of our actions are made or decided through our subconscious, I mean, that's a huge piece, right? I mean, if you just think about all your muscles, if you were to think that 95% of your mobility came from one muscle, what would you do to that muscle? You'd stretch it, you'd work it, you'd take care of it, you'd ice it, you'd do all the things because it's 95% of your mobility. So you'd take care of that muscle. Similarly, we don't know how to actually train our subconscious. It's not something that we just wake up knowing how to do. We have to be taught this. The thing about that I've learned is our subconscious, some people can kind of refer to it, hey, it's your habit, right? Well, we all know that habits can be learned in about 21 days? I mean, whatever the number is, 23 days. Our subconscious is extremely trusting. And what do I mean by that? If I look up into the sky and I tell myself over and 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 over again that it's purple, eventually I'm probably going to believe that the sky is purple because I've told myself that so many times. Similarly, training our subconscious to do certain things. I mean, if you really go back and just start kind of thinking about your morning, you put on your pants, you brushed your teeth, you ate your food, you took your shower, you did your workout. Most of that you did while your conscious brain was thinking something else. You did most of your work, yes, with your subconscious. So let's train it. And so his whole program, I love it. You can get his book and you can actually download it. But he calls it the 12-minute routine, where you've written certain things out and you read it to yourself every morning when you get out of bed to train your subconscious so that subconsciously you're thinking things. And I thought, I'll go a little bit more personal here. I thought, hey, well, it makes logical sense to me as I'm reading through the book. It makes logical sense to me. So anything that makes logical sense, I'm willing to give a go, right? So I gave it a go, and I kid you not, 2 weeks into it, I started recognizing change in myself. Just the way that I thought about things, the way that I approached people, the way that I approached relationships, the way that I was just naturally more focused, and I just felt naturally more disciplined and less distracted. Like this was happening almost automatically because I was tapping into my subconscious, and I couldn't get enough of it. I said, honey, you need to try this. And so I got my wife on it. She started doing it. And then when she started seeing the success, I said, okay, grab my kids, grab my one of my kids here. One of my oldest is in Brazil, but my second is still here in high school. Grabbed her, and she's a state athlete, and so started having her do it. And all of a sudden, her focus started changing, and she's like, "Dang, Dad, this is so." My point in bringing this up, if it's having an effect on me, it's having an effect on my wife, it's having an effect on my high school daughter, there's validity here. So being able to actually train your subconscious and working to do that, and John Mitchell, he'll even go on and say, even if you know about it, there's only about 2% of the population that actually try and do this. He said everybody else will just kind of fluff it off. Maybe try it a little bit, but they won't really stay in it. And so one of your questions was, how do I stay disciplined? One of the things I do for myself, this is me personally, right? I try and find a big question, something that's leading me to something I don't know, to just lead me to discovery, right? It's something out there. I think of it like as the Americas was to Columbus. I want to, excuse me, I want to find that thing that's going to just lead me out there. I don't know where I'm going. There's a lot of open ocean here. I don't know how long I'm going to get. Like, I know it's out here. I'm just going to go find it. And I have found these last couple of years, as I ask myself big questions, as I look for bigger questions within my own relationship, my own, some of it's spiritual, some of it's work related, some of it's relationships, depending on the bigger the question, the bigger the pull that I feel toward that. And that pull is what helps me, to answer your question, that pull is what helps me stay disciplined in doing those things, like training my subconscious and sticking with programs and keeping my health and everything in check. Whatever it is, those bigger questions really help pull me to stay disciplined in doing those things.
What motivates you, Rion?
Motivation changes. I've seen that over my life where I've been motivated for different reasons. And right now, what is largely motivating me, one, is a heavy desire to serve. If you look at the statistics around businesses and entrepreneurs, 96% fell within 5 years. 96%. Crazy. If you knew 100 entrepreneurs, only 4 are actually going to be around in a few years. And that's one of my big questions is why? Why is that? Now, I will say there's some businesses that got started that probably should have never been started, but there's a number of those, and that maybe they just didn't have the right coaching. They just didn't have the right tools at the right timing. So if we can help solve some of those problems, if we can turn 5% into 4% into 5% that stick around, hey, it's kind of like the starfish, right? Starfish on the beach and the boy just throwing them back. What difference are you going to make? Well, I made a difference to that starfish.
That one, yeah.
Right. And so that's what's motivating me largely right now from the business perspective.
So I hear you serve, and I also, you didn't say it, but impact, I would think, from that. So given that motivation, how do you measure success?
How do I measure success?
Given that motivation of impact, serving.
I would measure the success based on the temperature, the feeling that is being given. I can have these testimonial moments, and that this is another beautiful part I actually was just working on this morning. I told my Rybot to go back to all of my transcripts. And I said, hey, pull testimonials where people thanked me for this, or, they were happy for this. It's actually really cool. So, I mean, again, using that tool, but I would gauge it based on that. The comments from people when they just tell me like, crap, I've never thought of this. I've never seen it that way. 2 weeks ago, I had one lady, she was looking at some of the numbers after we were looking at patterns. Her comment was, that hurts my soul. She was seeing things that was being omitted, right, within the company, and for her realm, for her office realm, it accounted for about $840,000 a year. And she just really, crap, that hurts my soul. Well, of course it does. Great. Wonderful. That's now giving us permission to change. So I rate success based on the temperature of those feelings, those people that are providing the commentary back. If they're feeling more confident, if they're feeling more empowered, more clear, less jumbled, whatever those types of feelings are that they're getting simply because we're having a conversation and I just happen to have a product and a little micro SaaS that helps them, then, great, wonderful. That's how I tend to gauge that success. It's kind of like I've done youth. I've coached youth sports for over 20 years. And every now and then I'll get this letter from a young man that is now a young father, middle father. And they're reminiscing about something that I did. I've long since forgotten, but it's clear that it had an impact on their life. And so to me, that's how I gauge my quote, quote, success.
Want to show your love for discipline, inspiration, and the Joey Pins podcast? Now's your chance. Introducing the brand new Joey Pins merch store, where style meets discipline. Choose from premium apparel, cozy hoodies, stylish hats, durable bags, and your new favorite coffee mug, all featuring the iconic Joey Pins logo. Perfect for podcast fans, discipline enthusiasts, or as unique gifts for friends and family. Every purchase supports the Joey Pins Discipline Conversations podcast, helping us continue to inspire greatness and promote positive change. Visit joeypins.com/store today and wear your discipline proudly. Joey Pins merch. Wear it, share it, and live it. Very inspiring, Ryan. I really, really enjoyed our time today. Really, really insightful. Love your perspective. Anybody listening or watching, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me, just right on the website, you'll have it on there, 537BD. We're actually getting ready to launch some free trial stuff within our dashboard for people. But it's all right there. They can click the link. There's going to be those login credentials and things like that they can get. But it's my calendar is right there. The easiest thing to do is, hey, just pick a time. Let's have a chat. It's kind of like the kitchen. If you're hungry, you've got to go into the kitchen. So if you want to see how this will work, if you want to experience what is possible in the next 6-12 months, you got to go into the kitchen, meaning you got to go online and just pick the time. It's not hard. It's really simple. and that's the best way.
537bd.com. We'll make sure to put it there. Ryan, next time I'm in the greater DFW area, perhaps we'll get together and have a cup of tea.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. You be well.
Thanks, Joey.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pins Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinn's Discipline Conversations.